This is a presentation on Canada, ancestral land, and the sacred Tamarack tree. As Canada works through the process of truth and reconciliation, those of us who came to Canada as settlers are learning how the Indigenous peoples who lived on this land were treated during the time of discovery and colonization and into our present time. The Truth and Reconciliation Report listed 94 items that needed to be addressed at all levels of Canadian society to start the healing process for Indigenous, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. One of these is how we introduce ourselves and our connection to the land. So today I will share with you information about land acknowledgements, and also about sacred trees native to this land known as Turtle Island. Next slide. Land acknowledgement. Important gatherings in Canada, such as meetings and presentations, all the way to professional sporting and entertainment events, now begin with a land acknowledgement. Anyone can write a land acknowledgement, and we are encouraged to learn about the land we live on and the people who came before us. The first one that I wrote includes places important to my family and ends with honoring the land that I now call home. My name is Catherine Starr. I am the daughter of Mary Ruth Costello Starr, who is the daughter of Carmen Johnson Costello. And I live on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Cree, Mississaugas, and many other peoples since time immemorial. This land is under the Dish with One Spoon Treaty between the Iroquois and the Ojibwe nations, the Treaty 13, and the Williams Treaty. Toronto, or Tekaranto, is still home to many Indigenous, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. And we all learn to take care of this land around Lake Ontario, also known as the Lake of Shining Waters, Miigwech. What about the maple tree? Most people, when they think of Canada, think of the maple tree. It's the leaf that's on our flag. We've got, in Toronto, we follow the Toronto Maple Leafs hockey team. Maple syrup is one of our #1 exports. And in fact, maple syrup for Indigenous people was part of their currency. They would make maple sugar from the sap and store it in these pine cones made out of pine bark. So the bark of the pine would be treated, wrapped into a cone, and filled with the maple sugar. Some of these, and they were used as money, basically, how to trade with other people. And interesting enough, some of these cones of maple sugar have made it as far south as Arizona, where archaeologists found them, and the sugar itself was still good. So the maple tree is very sacred, but to Native people, all of nature was sacred, or is sacred. And one of those trees that for me has become very important is the Tamarack tree. So let me tell you its story. Next slide. In far northern land of Canada, in the area now called Nunavut, when the fall season was changing into winter, a flock of birds were heading south on their seasonal migration. Part of the way through their journey, the first storm of winter descended without warning. It was especially ferocious because the north wind had just been released from the grip of summer, and fall wanted to celebrate its release with a big blow. Frantic, the birds could sense danger and hurried to find shelter. Still, being so far north, the only shelter the weakening birds could see in the distance were the majestic tamarack trees. In those days, tamarack trees were indeed the most majestic trees in the forest. They grew bigger and taller than any other trees in the north, and they had thick branches full of needles that were as soft as feathers to keep them warm through the winters. These soft needles also allowed them to live farther north, where no other tree could thrive. Because of this, they had become very proud and spent all of their summers admiring their reflection in the northern lakes and ponds. For some unknown reason, that particular storm, when the birds needed this shelter most, the majestic tamarack trees said, "No, you cannot land on us. We are starting our winter sleep, and your noisy antics will keep us awake. Find another place to ride out this storm." Tired and cold, the birds were forced to fly on. The Great Spirit had watched the entire drama unfold and became very disappointed with the tamarack tree, and in an effort to teach them a lesson, declared, "Because you did not give the birds any shelter, none of you will have shelter from the cold of winter, and from now on, your needles will fall off like the leaves of trees to the south." All of a sudden, the slumbering tamaracks awakened to feel the chilling wind on their branches. They watched helplessly as their warm winter coat fell to the ground. The winter was very hard for the tamarack. In the years that followed, they gradually learned to weather the cold by becoming smaller and more unassuming. And at the same time, they became stronger and more durable. The tamarack trees learned from their error, and to show their regret at what they had done, they were determined to become the servant of the first people who inhabited the land. This pleased the Great Spirit, who then declared to bestow on the tamarack trees a new and great honor. With the help of the spirit of the muskeg, the bog, nutrients were released into the trees, allowing them to become a source of much needed medicine and tools for generations to come. Many years later, while traveling the woods, a man stopped for a rest. With his back to a young tamarack tree, surrounded by the peace of the forest, he fell into a deep sleep. He dreamed that he was traveling through a forest of tamaracks. He stopped to touch their soft needles, and he sensed they were speaking to him. As he listened, they told him the story of their long ago and assured him that the forgotten legend had really happened. Then a young tamarack that was eager to be some kind of assistance to this man offered to accompany him on his journey for support. He was touched by the young tree's offer and decided to honor the request. All of the trees watched as the man took out his hunting knife, cut down, trimmed, peeled, and smoothed the young tree into a tamarack hiking stick. By the time he was finished, many other young trees were eagerly volunteering themselves for the honor and adventure of being a support and a companion for the ever-increasing numbers of people that were walking in the many trails of the vast land. Wherever he hiked with his tamarack hiking stick, it was with renewed vigor in his step and a sense of unity with nature, with the trees and water, birds, animals, the earth, and the sky. While relaxing at the end of the day, when his hike was finished, he would gaze at his cherished walking stick and reflect on the days of yore. This is the story that I tell. May you be blessed by its telling. Next. So some facts about the tamarack. The name comes from the Algonquin word akametak, meaning wood used for making snowshoes. Very practical. It looks like an evergreen tree, but it is really a deciduous conifer tree. It can be found as far north as the Arctic Circle and down into southeastern US. It grows primarily near swamps or bogs. The tamarack tree through the seasons looks like this. In the fall, the needles turn a bright yellow. They're one of the first leaves to turn, and you can see them amongst all of the other trees. Once they turn yellow, they fall. In the winter, the branches are very crispy, and the tree looks dead, probably deader than any of the other trees that have lost their leaves during winter. In the spring, it is one of the first signs of the coming of spring in the Canadian Arctic. Small buds will start to form. The leaves are very soft and frilly, and you'll see the cones in it. They'll look a lot like the picture that's on this slide. And then in the summer, the tamarack becomes a home for many birds and provides shade and shelter to all who go there. Next slide. Tamarack has many, many uses. For food, this is just a sampling. For food, spring shoots are nutritious and can be boiled and eaten. The inner bark can be mixed with other flours to create breads. The sap is very, very sweet to chew and is good for indigestion. For medicine, teas can be made from its various parts and used for astringents, laxatives, diuretics, rheumatism, skin ailments, and even gargled for sore throats. Poultices made from the inner bark are used on sores, swellings, burns, and even headaches. Some very interesting things come through through technology. Ojibwe used the roots to make twined woven baskets. The Iroquois used the bark for tanning. And the Cree made toboggans, snowshoes, canoes, and twig hunting decoys, such as the one in the picture here. These woven decoys are considered artwork. And if you go on to some Etsy sites or other places where they sell different types of artwork, you can do a search for tamarack goose hunting decoy, and you'll find several Cree artisans that make things just like this, and they're absolutely beautiful. Next. So this is my story of the Tamarack. This is what it looks like in the picture, the yellow. That's what it looks like in the fall. And for me, it has been a source of spiritual healing. And it is one of the signs for me that fall is coming and winter is going to be long. Thank you very much.